going to these meetings and hearing conversations at the national level, the light bulb went off. Like, man, stormwater is not at the table. They're just not. They're often referred to, but they don't. There's very few, people that are actually at the table representing MS4s. So that always kind of bothered me, and that's why I could put the thing in my brain. Maybe there should be a group that does that. So that's what NMSA is about. Is we're the and there's a lot of organizations, ASFPM and APWA and WEF and ASCE, all these groups that kind of circle around stormwater, or they're part of what they do is stormwater, but there's no group that's dedicated specifically to MS4s. So that's what it's about. So if you have an MS4 permit, we're representing you. Our mission is to try to make your program more technically effective, more cost effective, and advocate for that.
Welcome back to a new episode of the Stormwater World podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us. Shout out to our sponsor, Bloxam & Company. They have a sediment and erosion control stormwater inlet filter that's made of coconut fiber. I've known Eric Pierman and the gang over there at Bloxam for years. We've done business with them in the past, and we continue to do business with them to this day. It's a great product, and it's very simple to install. It comes in pads or rolls that you can customize to just about any stormwater drain, and it's very, very simple to maintain as well. You get a great visual when driving your site because you don't have to stop and look down into the drain. You can literally just put this product over the top of the drain inlet, and then you're going to see the sediment on top of it. After a rain event, you can have someone sweep it off and get prepared for the next event. They also offer a free sample, so make sure to check them out. You can go to bloxam.com, that's BLOCKSOM.com, or you can contact them at 219-363-0206, or shoot Eric an email at eric.pierman, that's PEARMAN, at bloxam.com. He can answer any of your questions you may have, as well as let you know where the closest distributor is in your area. Thanks. Let's get back to the episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to a new episode of the Stormwater World podcast. This episode has been a long time coming. When I started this podcast a couple of years ago, we were going, and then I went to a few conferences, and then everybody said, "Hey, have you talked to Seth Brown? Have you talked to Seth Brown? You should have Seth Brown on your podcast." And I'm like, I don't know. Can you introduce me? I think we've been in the same room, but I don't know if I've ever met Seth Brown. And so fast forward 3 years, and I am excited to welcome Seth Brown to the podcast. Seth, thanks for taking the time to visit with me.
Oh, I appreciate it. And it's funny. We've been in orbiting for a long time, so it's good to connect officially this way. So I appreciate the time.
Well, before we get started, everyone knows on the podcast gets an introduction. So Seth Brown has over 25 years of experience in the water sector as the executive director of the National Municipal Stormwater Alliance, which is a 501c3 representing stormwater-focused organizations in 26 states across 9 of the 10 U.S. EPA regions, representing over 4,400 MS4s. And he is also the principal and founder of Storm and Stream Solutions, LLC. Seth has a PhD in civil engineering from George Mason University, teaches courses on water-related topics at Virginia Tech and the University of Maryland at Eastern Shore, and is a licensed professional engineer in the state of Maryland. Man, I didn't know. Excuse me. I apologize. Let me reintroduce Dr. Seth Brown to the podcast. We've gotten to chat a few times outside of the podcast now, so I totally glossed over your doctorness, Dr. Brown.
That's funny. I tell you what, it's an albatross, though. Whenever I can't, I'm trying to fix
It's albatross. You having a doctor is an albatross? Please
absolutely. I will, especially when you have a 15-year-old smart aleck, I'll say, son. Every time I can't like change, something, or I'm trying to tweak something, like some kind of mundane fix it, do it yourself thing. If I can't do it, he's like, "Oh, you've got a PhD in engineering, but you can't fix whatever, the refrigerator door." I'm like, yeah. So nice. I try to wear it lightly. I try to stay under the radar, but anyway. Yes, I've got a PhD. It was very something that I ever planned on doing. I never thought I would do that. So anyway, it is what it is. Everybody's got to do something. Everybody's got letters. So that's what it's about.
Yeah, got letters. Everybody's got letters. or wants letters, I guess. I don't know. We're gonna leave all that alone.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to come on the pod, and I believe it's because you do a lot of presenting across the country. But today we're going to do something a little different, rather than any kind of formal presentation, which I know you're familiar with giving. I want to talk about the organization that you're creating, that I was actually a member of when it first got started, back when I was selling compliance software, which is the NMSA. So let's just start to unpack that for everybody and tell them, especially all the municipalities out there that may be listening, why it's important and how you're trying to put together that voice and representation for them.
Okay, yeah. So NMSA, that's how we refer to it. You can call it NMSA. You can call it whatever you want. If you become a member, you can call it anything you want to, but we refer to it as NMSA or NMSA, whatever it is. So
Gotcha.
So that it started actually the kind of the core of it, or the kernel of it, started way back in like 2009, 2010, when there was the stormwater rulemaking. Like that they were talking about doing at the national level. I'm in the DC area. I'm from Minnesota originally, went to school in the South, and it came out east, which is where I've been for a while. So I was working at the Water Environment Federation, helped to start their stormwater program. And then I spun off an LLC, started doing work there, and I decided to just set up this organization, B16, because there was no national group. And I go back to the stormwater rulemaking. That was, back in 2008, 9, 10, whatever that was. That was, nothing galvanizes an industry like a national regulation. And, there was a lot of hand wringing and, state stormwater organizations, CASQA, Ohio Stormwater Association, those kind of organizations, which there's about, I would say, 30-ish, 35, states that have a kind of a formalized organization like that. Not all, but most, maybe it's up to 40 now. But anyway, those groups said, hey, we don't know how, we want to be involved in this dialogue with EPA as this rulemaking is taking place, because it's a big deal. And EPA also was like, man, we can't, it's hard for us to have a conversation with this industry. They're all over the place. There's a lot of small, mid-sized communities. It's just, they're not well organized yet. So that's when there was Andy Neprash in Minnesota. We'll give him kudos here. He's the one who really kind of started to corral everybody together, and he's a strong personality. So he made that happen. And that became, over time, kind of the core. And we started with, I think, 5 states stormwater organizations in 2016. And then we got our IRS, our 501c3 IRS approval. As you probably have heard or whatever, it takes a couple of years to get that. And it's not easy, but once you get it, you got it. So that happened in 2018. So we've been officially around for about 7 years as a 501c3. So we're relatively young. But the whole point was that, spending, I was in the government affairs area for the Water Environment Federation for a couple of years. Again, being in the DC area, that's part of our job, is to go to EPA, go to meetings, go to Congress, meet with folks to try to advocate for certain policies and funding and whatnot. And WEF covers stormwater. And so, I noticed, and my background's all in stormwater. I don't do any wastewater, never done that before. So going to these meetings and hearing conversations at the national level, the light bulb went off, like, man, stormwater's not at the table. They're just not. They're often referred to, but they don't. There's very few people that are actually at the table representing MS4s. So that always kind of bothered me, and that's why I could put the the thing in my brain. Maybe there should be a group that does that. That's what NAMS is about. Is we're the and there's a lot of organizations, ASFPM and EPWA and WEF and ASCE, all these groups that kind of circle around stormwater, or they're part of what they do is stormwater, but there's no group that's dedicated specifically to MS4s. So that's what it's about. So if you have an MS4 permit, we're representing you. Our mission is to try to make your program more technically effective, more cost effective, and advocate for that at the Capitol Hill and other places in DC, but also developing training tools, templates, that kind of stuff that would help MS4s kind of meet their permit, meet their community goals. Because I think it's still a young sector. And again, 6,000 of the 7,500, whatever, plus regulated communities, most are, 6,000 or so are small, mid-sized communities. They just don't have huge resources. So our hope was to really represent all of MS4s, but especially those who have been left out of the conversation more so at the national level, but also they're the ones who need more and more resources provided to them. So that's what we're about, and that's what we're trying. That's the niche we're trying to fill, and we're trying to be true to just sticking to that. Yeah, I've seen at the national level, a lot of nonprofits, they try to cover everything. So it's like they spread themselves a mile wide, but an inch thin kind of thing. I think that's not a good way, personally. That's not how I wanted to be. So I said, let's find this niche area that has a need. Let's just stay in this niche and try to, and let others fill those. And, we'll partner with other organizations, but we need to serve this niche. So that's what we're trying to do. So that's where we're coming from.
I think I've said this before in other episodes of the pod that like nobody cares about stormwater unless it's coming in their house, right?
Yeah.
Like they care about the flooding aspect, and then there's so many other silos, if you will, or just different aspects of stormwater in general. To kind of reiterate some of the things you're saying, because I think people miss it, right? Like, so for the listeners, what you just said is on a very narrow focus so that stormwater doesn't get just thrown in somebody else's bucket. And now we're staring at weird regulations that you can't even figure out how to budget for. You're taking on an initiative at the national level in DC to advocate and lobby for these MS that have no way they could pay a consultant to go do that on their behalf at some small local level. And what we need is everybody to join, to have that voice on a national level. And then you mentioned a few other things, because some of that gets a little ethereal, right? You're like, oh, okay, he's going to go, here's Seth with his cape flying off into the, to fight the good fight in Washington. And then I'm here running my MS4, banging my head on my desk about how to figure out, because I'm new and I'm trying to figure out how to tackle, education. So I think number one, let's acknowledge that what you're doing at that national level, but then you're realistic to realize that people need on that local, sitting there trying to figure out my program. There's a lot of resources that you're providing to help me better understand what I'm supposed to be doing, as well as actually accomplish it. Do you want to kind of unpack some of those nuts and bolts, like practical things that you're providing a member that joins?
Yeah, no, it's a couple things. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest, well, okay, you use the word lobbying. I just want to make sure as a 501c3, we can do very limited lobbying.
I apologize.
You don't have to apologize. Advocate. No, it's true. But and no, it's one of those things that you don't know. Why would anyone know this until you have a nonprofit? Like, how do you define those things, right? So but there's a lot that you can do. The bottom line is this: there's a lot that you can do to advocate before becoming lobby. Because once you lobby, then it becomes a thing. Lobbying is necessary and needed, and there's a lot of water lobbyists out there. But what we do is advocate for the sector, not lobby for. Usually, you lobby for a specific entity. So, like the city of whatever, the university, whatever, they have their own lobbyists. So there are, but. So so we advocate as a 501c3 to further our mission, which is again to try to support MS4s, basically, and make them more technically effective, more cost effective, with the understanding if that happens, then we should have better water quality outcomes, and that's really what we're talking about. You brought up also, it's only a problem if it comes in your house, kind of thing, and I think that's true. There's nothing that is more like, I'll never forget watching. There was a huge flood that took place in 2016. And I used to live in a different location. My wife and I lived in a different location. Where we lived was up on a hill in this big balcony, and we were looking over, and there's a river that drains into the Potomac, and I mean it chronically floods. And we actually watched real time as this thing came out and just went into houses. And what's funny is, as a consultant, I ended up actually doing the study on that, which was kind of cool in Fairfax County. Which is, as a consultant, I got to see it and I got to model it, which was kind of interesting to see that. But there's nothing that makes budgets go up for stormwater more than a huge flood. So you're exactly right. And that's the thing that is while the MS4 program is water quality, clearly that's the case. The reality is, and we all know, is that localized flooding is part of stormwater programs. So, and a lot, if not, most, I would say, stormwater infrastructure does a little bit of both. right? It does treatment and it does some, not all the time, but a lot of it does, right? So the reality of the sector is that while it's permanent, it's environmentally driven, it also plays a major role in localized pluvial flooding, right? So I do think that we play a role, and I think that's becoming more and more apparent as we get better models and more computational methods and power to be able to look more in a more granular way at these localized flooding. And if you add up all this localized flooding impacts, they dwarf the large, huge riverine flooding, but those are the big spectacular floods that we all hear about. But man, there's a ton. There's a lot of data that we could go over, and we don't have time to go over it. But there's reports that have come out recently that talk about the lack of insurance for localized flooding impacting houses, residential areas, and as resilience becomes more of an issue, we're realizing. So that's driving like the awareness of stormwater is my point. And along with it, also we're recognizing things like microplastics and PFAS, and so we're just learning more and more and more new things on the water quality side too. So between those two things, I think the stormwater is on its way up. That's to get back to your question or your thought about national versus local. There's the action happens at the local level, right? That's the whole point. Like how my mission is, how can we help to support those at the local level and the front lines doing their work? As far as like what do we have available now, we're trying to grow that. We've got what we call bulk training, which is kind of the basic training available for communities to all do online, and it's really cheap compared to other training programs. We're talking like IDDE, basics on ENS, things like that, with the idea that training is all, like you said, I give talks, I go around the country and I give talks, or I do talks like virtually, and training comes up as a need all the time. And it's training that there's training and there's good training, and then there's training that's updated training. There's training available, but is it updated? Is it good? That kind of stuff. So we're trying to develop training. We have a training program. We've got our own learning management system, so we're going to be developing more. I teach. I like to talk, as you can tell. So, and I'm a certified trainer for federal highway on water and stormwater issues. So, and I've been doing that for 20 years. So I do a lot of training, a lot of talking, a lot of teaching. So that's a natural place for us to go, because training, there's a need for that. So we are developing that. And we, like I said, we've got, if you go to our website, MS4 and as NMSA, then, or you can go to National Stormwater Alliance, I think is still available. If you go to our website, then you can learn what's available. But that's one example of like lower cost training that's that can be purchased for especially for like training is not always just for stormwater professionals. It's for people in your staff in an MS4 program, like first responders, parks and rec folks, inspectors, maintenance folks. It can be hundreds that have to get this training every year to meet permit requirements. To track that, to make sure that, the old way is like, oh, I've got a list of people here. I got to make sure that Jimmy's done his and have to email people. This is a program that sets that you can track all of that. You can do reporting. And so my point is there's training. We're starting that. We've got it available now, and we're trying to expand that. So that's one example. Another example is we've set up what we call the National MS4 online resource, which is we actually teamed with EPA Region 9, and the whole point was to develop a basic level of training for, like, there's a new person who just got hired. I don't know what MS4 means. I don't know. This happens all the time too, especially as we see generational shift. People are like, oh, now I got to do this. What is this about? So it's a whole website dedicated to all the elements of MS4s and whatnot. And we also have a resource library there that anybody can upload their reports to. They can't be commercial. They have to be like informational. So we're trying to grow this online resource of free reports. And, these are available too, but we're just trying to grow that for those who are like, where I always think to myself is like, would this help somebody who's running an MS4 program? So those are some examples of the practical stuff. We want to develop a lot more. And part of that is just understanding what people need. That's one of the biggest, so WEF has done these MS4 needs surveys. So we're looking at that. That's very helpful. But also, and as we can get more members joining us, they can tell us what's needed, so we can be responsive to the sector. And so MS4s can join us right now, and you can join for free too. So if you guys join, you can tell us and give us feedback that way. So Last
Okay.
thing, if I can I one last? I know I've been rambling for a while, but
You're good. No, it's all good information. Yeah, go ahead. What
well, the
was the
last
last
thing,
thing?
yeah. So there's a couple examples of training, and then our national MS4 online resource. But there is also having an advocate at the national level. I think part of when I give talks around the country, part of my spiel is to try to motivate folks to realize or to consider that it does matter, and having a national presence does matter at the local level. And an example is that as a national group, we are part of a coalition called the Passive Receiver Coalition, which has to do with PFAS. So the PFAS regulations are, PFAS is not, it's everywhere. It's not going anywhere, going away anytime soon. Right. It's a big deal. And, right. It's a huge deal. So, the way that it works, it's not, now it's considered by EPA as a toxic or hazardous substance or a toxic substance. So I think it's one and the same. But the point is, it no longer is in the NPDES world. It's in the CERCLA world, which is the Superfund, right? So it's considered like a Superfund, toxic hazard, whatever. That's what matters about that. Before getting into all the arcane, whatever, the bottom line is that under CERCLA rules, if I'm just 3M or DuPont or whoever who creates this stuff, who manufactures it, they're the source of it, right? If they get sued, they can drag in by some third party, whatever, they can drag in others who transport. So there's those who generate the pollutant and those who transport the pollutant. They're actually called out in the circular regulations. And so MS4s, we transport it. We don't generate it, but we transport it. But that's how we are we could be, and this has happened in many other industries. So if I'm 3M or I'm DuPont or whoever, I'm going to try to reduce my risk by spreading it around. I'm going to bring others into it, and including the public sector. And we're part of a group called the Passive Receivers Coalition, which is like, hey, we're just passive receivers. We don't generate it. So we work together, and there's dozens of other organizations, all the big players in the water sector and many others. And we're working together to get legislation, because EPA has already said, hey, we don't intend for this to happen, but we don't have any control. It's legislation. It's how the Clean Water Act is structured. We can't do anything about it. So this could happen. We don't want it to happen, but so it's not like EPA is coming after it. It's just the way of the world. So you have to change the legislation. And so that's the point of that we're working with this coalition, and there's legislation that's been introduced that will provide protection to passive receivers like MS4s and wastewater treatment plants and others. And I made sure that we were included in this legislation. MS4s were included in this legislation. So we're often forgotten, frankly, in these types of major water issues. So that's an example. Another example, and that matters at the local level. To me, that's a huge deal. Another example is like national regulations, like Waters of the U.S. They're going to redefine that again. When that happens, we have to make sure that there's exemptions or exceptions. I can't remember what the technical term is, but basically that green infrastructure and things that started out as treatment don't inadvertently become a Waters of the U.S., because that makes things very difficult, right? It used to be spelled out in previous versions of the regulation, but as all these changes have been going on over the years, because it's been like a ping pong game going back and forth between the different administrations. But do you expand it? Do you contract the Waters of the U.S. definitions and whatnot? Whether you expand or contract, that's one thing. We just want to make sure that we can protect the interests of MS4s, which is we don't want to have a bioretention facility become considered Waters of the U.S. And it's a very niche area, and the Waters of the U.S. regulation's huge. That little area could be really, really important for us in the MS4 world. So that's another example where national stuff does matter at the local level. I could go on for days about this stuff, but those are examples of.
It's interesting to me. I think if I were to reiterate it, and I'd like you to correct me where I'm not wrapping my brain around it properly, but it sounds like in being associated and a member of NMSA,
mm-hmm.
I get advocacy for the sector at a national level.
Right.
I get advocacy, and I get a group that is keeping me informed on the pulse of what's happening nationally that could be trickling down and affecting me locally
Yes.
because I'm head down trying to figure out my program, but I can lean on your organization to provide a voice for me as well as to let me know what's going on. And there's resources that I can tap into through other MS4s that are fighting that good fight. And then as I start to have success, I can upload similar things to create this snowball effect of MS4s that are, kind of banding together, if you will, to provide this database of information so that we can all have better water quality at the local level as well as better representation on a national level. Did I kind of grab?
That's very good. That's very good. And really, it goes beyond that because we're trying to do, that's all true. And that's exactly it. We're trying to be that resource at the national level. There's also part of this is historically, because we have not had a strong presence nationally at the federal level. And when you do that, you have to be at the table. And that's where there's been no one at the table. And so we, advocating for, hey, this is important, or hey, have you thought about this, for a million different issues. That's really important. So what that's resulted in our sector, because we're young, because we haven't been at the table most of the time at the national level, regulations are developed or policies are developed that are kind of like foisted onto us. We're like, oh, man. And so we react to it. Now, we're not here to we're not trying to be contrarian. We want the sector to move forward. We embrace new innovations and technologies. I think regulation is good as long as it's smart regulation and it's consistent regulation, right? So it's just that when regulations don't make sense or they don't consider things like, the costs, why ask cities to do things that there's no way possible to happen? Environmental groups they've been really on the forefront pushing things. And in many ways, that's good. They've got that role to play. They're pushing things forward. They've made they've got good intentions and whatnot, but there's not been a counter argument to say, wait a second, well, that's all good. However, here are the practical limitations? And we can't get from 0 to 60, in 2 seconds. So we're the voice of reason, I think, at the table to say, look, we all want better water quality. That's why we get up in the morning and go to bed at night. That's what we do. So we're not pushing against it. It's just more like, can we do this in a practical way? And lastly, when we're at the table, we can be proactive instead of reactive. And that's really what having a consistent national presence or federal presence is really helpful, and it's necessary and needed so that we can shape policies instead of policies kind of shaped for us. And there's a big difference there.
Yeah. Proactive versus reactive in the stormwater world. That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. It's just, now you're just talking crazy.
It's true, because you're right. The nature of what we do is all reaction, right? It's my God,
right.
What's happening? Oh, no, it's true. It's true.
We got to I like where you're setting your standards, sir.
Yeah, no, it's true though. It's
Let's
true.
talk about the membership again. You mentioned something about free. I'm assuming it's got to be on some sort of tiered program because you can't function on free. So do you want to kind of what does it take to be a member, and what is the cost? And and is it an annualized thing? Is it a 5-year thing? Is it a month-to-month thing? Because just to line it out for the listeners so they can get involved.
Yeah. So when we were first set up, our membership was limited to state organizations because that's kind of where things. And the thought was if we can work with the state organization networks, then they can reach out to cities that are regulated. So it's kind of a branch network kind of thing. That was the original vision, and that's worked. And the state organizations are still members, and they provide leadership. There are our board members, as an example. But the reality is, it's hard for them to take all the information we provide and get it out to their members and get information, most importantly, back up from the local level. So that's why we've opened this up, because of there's been people knocking on our door, sending us emails saying, hey, I'm an MS4, I want to join you guys. Okay, so we changed our bylaws and allowed that to happen. And now we've got 30 MS4s that are members now. We want to get to hundreds and thousands in the future. That's what we really need. And the costs are really, really reasonable. And we're talking if you're in phase 2, it's $250 at most. If you join in groups, you can join in groups and get an economy of scale. It's a little bit lower. If you are located in a state that has a state organization, like one of the 26 state organizations that are members of ours, then you even get more of a discount. So it depends on where you are. It depends on how you come in. But it's like, phase ones can come in for $500. Phase twos come in for $250 or lower. And phase ones can be a little bit lower too. So and that's an annual fee. So that's for those who pay. And we really, for us to sustain as an organization and grow, that's what we need. We just need to, and plus we need to add an organization like ours has to be responsive to our membership. Our membership needs to be MS4s. That's really at the end of the day. And we also have, as you mentioned, and I mentioned too, I think a free membership for MS4s. That's available now. It's not going to be available forever. And if you become a free member, the idea is to join, get in kind of in the club and start to learn what it's about. Do you like it? Do you not like it? And the hope is at some point you become a paying member. So that's the idea. We're
Gotcha. We'll link.
Yeah,
we'll link all that in the show notes for
please.
you.
That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, so we don't have to describe
for all the listeners.
Yeah.
We don't have to go through each membership, but and then people can reach out to you with questions. We'll do it like that. And then I think what I'd like to talk about now is, especially since it's coming up, is National Stormwater Day. Before we go on to some of our other our talking points, National Stormwater Day is coming up, everyone, on November 17th. You can register at ms4nmsa.org/Stormwater Day, or you can go to, what was the other website? Stormwater.day. That's easier. Stormwater.day, and we'll link that down there. You want to talk a little bit about National Stormwater Day and what you got going on there?
I do. I will. I do want to come back to membership on a couple things, but I'll come back to that. Well, just I think Stormwater Day is something that I'd like to talk about. I appreciate that. We started Stormwater Day because the idea was that there's all these stormwater awareness events that take place throughout the country. I think it was Wisconsin. They have Stormwater Awareness Week or month, and it was the governor signed that as some kind of official act or whatever. I think Washington State's done that too, but like City of Phoenix, I think, has a Stormwater Awareness Week. Things like that.
There's a big one out of California, Stormwater Awareness Week. It just happened.
That just took place, right?
Happened. Yep. They've got a lot of following on that one. It's a good
deal. I did a presentation on that. Did you do that? Did you do a presentation with them too?
Last year, John Tarofskis, one of the people that put it on, we did a co podcast. Like, he's got SWIP Radio, and we've got Stormwater World. We did a co podcast episode on stormwater technologies last year. Yeah, I didn't do one this year. So it's a good little opportunity for some free learning.
Exactly. And that's the thing we wanted to celebrate, and like have a day that recognizes all these awareness efforts throughout the country, because they're great. That's what we need, more awareness. And again, that's our mission, is to raise the awareness and understanding of stormwater writ large for public officials, for the public, for folks here in DC. There just needs to be more awareness of what stormwater professionals do and what programs do and the challenges that we have and whatnot. So that was the purpose of it. We chose November. It's actually November 16th is the day, but we because it's on a weekend, that's a Sunday, I think, this year. So we're actually having a webinar on the 17th, but we chose November 16th because it was November 16th, 1990 was when the MS4 program was officially promulgated in the Federal Register. That's when it was created. So for the first time for phase ones, right? And then phase two is, 10 years later. So, that was the reason we chose that day. It also happens to coincide with National Button Day. There's a day for everything. I found when you go to set up one of these things. Yeah. So we're teamed with the button lobby and against Velcro and zippers.
Yeah,
and whatnot.
I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I love me some stormwater, but that's some steep competition going against Button Day. So,
well, so we're creating buttons so that we have stormwater buttons, so we can cover both bases. Nice.
Better to join them than try to compete. I got it.
Buttons have been around longer than we have, as an issue.
Very, very smart.
I've worn my buttons now.
It looks like you got a whole lineup of speakers here for the day. Mm-hmm. Is it just one big webinar? Is it multiple webinars, I guess, across the day?
Yeah. What we do is we've done every year we've done just a webinar. We did an hour and a half, I think, this is the third time we're doing this. So the first couple of times we did an hour and a half. This year we decided let's just not because there's not enough to cover, but we wanted to make it more of a lunch hour thing, so make it middle of the day. This is 1 to 2 p.m. on November 17th, that Monday. So that it's, lunch-ish for the East Coast. It's definitely lunch for Mountain and Central folks too. So anyway, we have a different lineup, but we try to just provide updates on our organization. We also want to provide updates on other national things, and we always recognize what we call the National Stormwater Champion. Last year it was John Whitescarver, who was really one of the folks back in like the 70s, in the 70s through the 80s, who developed a lot of the MS4 policies. He was the guy at EPA who really wrote those words down back in the day. And then he passed away during COVID, which is unfortunate. We want to recognize, he set up the National Stormwater Center, which is a group that's a member of ours also. We nonprofits can join our membership, and several have. So last year was John Weiscover. This year it's Neil Weinstein. If folks don't know Neil, they should. He's a character. He established the Low Impact Development Center, or LID Center, and you'll never meet anybody quite like Neil. I've known Neil for 20 years. I was a grad student working for him as a grad student and an intern many, many, many years ago. We've kept in touch and worked together ever since. And just want to recognize his contribution to the field of stormwater. He's one of those folks who really started. He did a lot of work in Prince George's County back when low impact development and green infrastructure was a very novel thing. He was one of the first to really get that out there. So we'll have Emily Clifton, who heads up the Low Impact Development Center now. She's going to talk about Neil, and we all have our story. So it's the point of the event is to recognize what stormwater does, stormwater professionals do, what the stormwater sector is about. And it's not heavy technical stuff, but we're going to talk about the centers of excellence. So we're going to hear a little bit of updates on that, the stormwater centers of excellence around the country. We're going to hear from a couple of those, which is a big deal. And we advocated for that, and so did others, organizations. And we'll talk about the initial results of the newest, not even released yet, MS4 needs assessment survey, so we can get a peek behind the curtain on that to hear what's going on. So a very helpful, statistically significant survey of what MS4s are saying is the biggest challenges, the biggest needs that they have. Again, that has to guide what groups like ours do and being responsive to the sector. So anyway, that's what it's about. People can get an hour PDH or one PDH by attending.
Nice.
Yeah, so you can do that. It's free. It's always going to be free. It always has been free. All of our webinars have been free, but it's probably going to be changing soon. But that one will always be free because we also recognize we're going to have also Washington State their Stormwater Awareness Week. We're going to hear about how that went. And so we always try to focus in on more of the stormwater awareness events. Maybe we should do the other one that we talked about before, California, and that one, maybe we'll do that next year. So, but the point is, like, how do you start your own awareness week in your own jurisdiction or your own state if you haven't done it yet? So we'll hear a little bit about how do you set it up and how does it work and how, what makes it responsive and grow and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to be talking about.
Gotcha. No, it looks good. You got a nice looking speaker lineup. So stormwater.day, check it out, sign up. Free stormwater education. I see a lot of people, good, bad, or ugly. I know budgets are tight and I do see some people tend to have things, say things on the interwebs about, conferences and costs and whatnot. I'm always trying, if I see something that's a non-cost factor for people, they can get some education, figure out what's going on in the stormwater world. I like to push that along. Well, heck, that's what this podcast is for.
Yeah.
But hey, so I guess I jumped the gun. We went to National Stormwater Day, which is November 17th. Again, everybody, go register. 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern on November 17th. But I had interrupted you. You said you wanted to talk a little bit more about memberships?
Yeah, just real quick. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I really wanted to stress the need for MS4s to join because that's got to be the core of what we do, and we need to have more and more membership there. So, and that's not to take away anything from state membership. Become part of your state organization. And we do provide an incentive. If you're a member of your state organization, you get a discount for joining us too. So the point is that we still have value for local MS4s at the national level and to be be the voice, right? But beyond that, there's all sorts of others, the groups that are interested in, affiliate members, which are like consultants, law firms, other nonprofits. I mentioned the National Stormwater Center. We're talking with AASHTO right now, the State Highway Transportation officials. about joining. They've got a stormwater committee. So that's a whole group there. And it's, right now it's just a flat fee. If you're a private industry, it's $1,500 a year, and you get a spot on our website where you get a company profile and whatnot, and access to becoming, to put on a webinar and things like that. And then if you're a nonprofit, it's only $500 a year. Or you can get a waive depending on, some kind of agreement too, because we're trying to make this as low as possible so that it can be, we're not trying to make it a burden. I put it that way, but we also need enough funding to actually, I still do this part-time. I don't have staff, so I'm very small. We're very small, but it's something that we need to grow if we're going to do this. So the membership group I wanted to mention is what we call Emeritus members. And that's inspired by my dad, who's 90 years old. Literally last weekend, just went back to Minneapolis to celebrate his 90th birthday. And guy still works 3 days a week, and he still gets out and golf. So he's in great shape. And the reason I bring that up is because I think there's a whole lot of stormwater professionals who they retire or they're semi-retired, and they want to continue. They got a ton of institutional knowledge, a ton of passion for what they're doing. They dedicated their career to this, and to just retire, some people it's just like unplugging, right? And you're like, oh my God, what do I do with my time now? And so my dad was like, what am I going to do if I don't work? I'm not, I'm like, oh, relax. He's like, whatever. I relax enough. Okay, so he loves his profession, and he's continuing to work that way. And I think there's just, again, with our demographics, there's just more and more people retiring that still, want to stay active for mental, emotional, whatever professional reasons. And so that's why we set that up. We've got 5 emeritus members, and they don't pay anything. They're just people who contribute, and they have to pay.
Yeah, I'm on the website. I'm on that website right now. Is that Paul Davis? Is that Tennessee Paul Davis?
Yeah, Paul Davis from Tennessee.
It just says his name, and I'm like,
yep.
That's so funny. Like, that tells you the impact. No, Paul Davis. I'm just saying, like, he is, like, in my mind, he's kind of Tennessee Stormwater, so that's pretty cool.
He helped to create TDEC, or not he worked at TDEC, but he helped to create TINSA, which is the Tennessee Stormwater Association. And he's like instrumental. You're right. He's like Mr. Stormwater back then. And he's a perfect example of somebody who's just wants to stay active, and it's great. He's a wonderful spirit. And so we've got folks like Paul, and I think we'll get more and more of those folks. Just, I think it's great. And anyway, so that's the other membership. I wanted to make sure to mention that people know that we're trying to be different ways to become a member.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's another aspect or a facet within it with the STEPP program. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of moving parts to STEPP. We can talk about it today. You can give a brief overview. I almost feel like we may need to come back and do a follow-up episode so you can unpack it better.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You're right. I think it would be better to kind of spend a full episode on, or whatever, or another piece of time or a period of time to talk about that. So just in short, though, STEPP is our largest and most significant program. And you can think of it as the consumer reports for stormwater infrastructure. That's kind of the elevator pitch, that we're working to develop testing standards to have some kind of apples to apples comparison between different products. And we're starting, and it's called STEPP because it's stormwater testing and evaluation for products and practices. So we're starting with proprietary practices, which everyone is very familiar with. The hydrodynamic separators, cartridge filters, those types of technologies that are out there that are used everywhere. And, New Jersey and Washington have been leaders in developing these programs, but there's many outside of those states that use those programs. And it's clearly there's a need for a national effort. STEPP has been going on for a long time. Started at WEF, and we've picked up the mantle about 4 or 5 years ago, 2021, I guess, and we've grown it. So it's now functioning. We're having our first we've got multiple verifications going on right now, and we're working, basically leveraging the great work that's been done by Washington's TAPE program and in the New Jersey NJCAT, NJDEP program. And those programs, by the way, are continuing on. They're not going anywhere, at least for now. So I don't know about the future, but they are continuing right now. I just want to be clear. But we're working to take those state programs and basically scale them up. So, and then the whole point of it, again, is since we're not working for them, that's not our mission is not to help them. Our mission is to help MS4 programs, that if MS4s can get information that they can trust, it's verified data about, this is not just, hey, believe me, we get 80% TSS removal or whatever under these flow conditions. This is us saying, oh, well, a third-party group that's highly qualified. We've got third-party reviewers and whatnot. We set up testing standards, and the outcome of that is, yeah, you get 80% removal. We've checked it. So that way we're a trusted source, third-party, unbiased group that has verified that performance. And I think that's very helpful for the industry to know that what you're buying has been, somebody's looked at and said, yeah, that's legitimate. There's a lot more to it than just that, but that's kind of the practical, kind of like the Cliff Notes of it, the summary of where we are right now, of what it's about and where we are right now. Again, there's a lot more to be said. So I think having a deeper discussion on this would be warranted.
Yeah, I mean, we could even bring some people on with you if you want.
That'd be great. No, that would make a lot of sense, frankly.
Yeah, I think we should probably do that. So yeah, if you go to the website though, if you go to NMSA's website and you want to learn more prior to the next episode coming out about STEPP, it's there on the website. And I just
there's also a separate website called stormwatertesting.com.
Oh, there you go. We'll link that as well. And and if you've got questions prior to that, you can always reach out to Dr. Brent, reach out to Seth, and he'd be happy to answer your questions. Hey, as we wrap up, we had a talking point on here, and I'm just going to kind of read out your notes, and I'll let you unpack it, right? So the stormwater sector is undervalued, under-resourced, and misunderstood, but there are ways to address these points, which is important because there's so much potential improvement to make in the stormwater sector to drive the sector forward in many ways. That was the notes I know you put in, many nights ago when you filled out the form to be on the pod. And so, but I feel like you probably could still unpack that for us. So what are your final thoughts as we can start to wrap things up around that?
Yeah, I mean, again, stormwater is always been seen as and I show this slide a lot when I give presentations of like an old 1950s view of the typical Midwestern, I guess. Me being Midwestern is what I think about Thanksgiving. You've got the kids, the adults table, and then you got the kids table, right? And
oh my gosh, is that only a Midwest thing? I grew up in Southern Indiana, so like that is so true. I'd love to know if anybody wants to tell us, like, is that only a Midwest thing? Because it was like you just so wanted to get older so you didn't have to sit at the kids table.
Yeah, because the kids' table is like this little fold-up table, and it's all rickety, you know what I mean? And you get the plastic silverware, and, you're like shooting peas at each other or whatever it is. But you always want to graduate to the adult table because they're having real conversations about real things, and they've got silverware that's real. You know what I mean? And they got all the good stuff. So I bring that up, and I'm Catholic. I bring that up not for any other reason, but I come from a big Catholic family, which is kind of a redundant thing, I guess. But so the point is that our kids' table was huge, and I was the youngest of all my cousins, so I was looking up at the adult table forever. So I'm still working through my therapy probably here, but you know what I mean? Anyway. So the point is, we've been at the kids' table for a long time as a sector, and it's time to move up to the adults' table. And I think that that takes time. That it takes an effort. And I think more than anything else, it requires, like, no one's going to take you seriously until you take yourself seriously, and that's the thing I try to tell stormwater folks is that what we do is important. Another slide I have is about, it's Al Franken, because being Minnesota, I have to think about him. He's from Minnesota. He's had a Saturday Night Live skit where he was, Stuart Smalley. Do you remember Stuart Smalley? Do you remember this skit back in the day?
I'm good enough. I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me.
Exactly.
As he stared in the mirror.
As he stares in the mirror, right? And that's like, it's so funny. Yeah, so he's positive affirmation hour or something like that, and so he's always wanting somebody to like him, And I feel like stormwater. I call it where we've got stormwater. Instead of post traumatic stress disorder, which I'm not trying to minimize that, we have, poor stormwater self-esteem disorder, PSSD, that we have to look in the mirror and say, God darn it, what we do is important, and when we take ourselves seriously, then we're going to demand to be taken more seriously by others too. And so I really feel like we have to create that change that we want to see. And that's the take home, I think, that I have. And we're trying to help to harness that and catalyze that, for the stormwater sector. I think it's past time to have a national organization that does this, working with state organizations, working with others. We're not trying to be everything to everybody. We're just trying to play our role, and everyone's got their part. And I just feel like we've been undervalued at the local level or at the national level, at the local level too. But we've been underrepresented at the national level, and that's what we want to try to change. So that's what that's about, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I just want to read it one last time for everybody as we wrap up. And I really appreciate you taking the time today to be with us here on the podcast. And so we talked about, NMSA and what you get and what you're doing. And, you live right there, striking distance of DC, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's like,
for better or for worse.
Oh, well. But here's the thing, like you said, it's you, and then you've got board people, but you don't have this big staff. So it's like, oh, how can this organization represent me, at the national level? Well, spoiler alert, he lives right there. So he's got access to these people. You're putting together these resources. But let me wrap. $250 for a small MS4. I think is totally affordable. Of course, I don't run an MS4. Okay, everybody can come shoot me in the comments if that's. Oh, wait, I'll have to edit that out. I didn't say the word shoot. Everybody can come at me in the comments about budgets and whatnot. But here's another way to look at it. After talking to you here for the last hour,
mm-hmm.
for $250 a year, you can basically wear out a PhD civil engineer in stormwater. Wear him out. Call him up. Ask him a question. I'm pretty sure, like, you've always taken my call when I call, I think you're accessible, and you definitely seem that way. I've seen you I think there was a time, in fact, I know it before when we actually met in person, because I was like, oh, he's there. Everybody's on me. He needs to come on the pod. Let me go track this dude down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, grief. You got done talking, and I'm just like, well, all these people go away, so I can just go shake this dude's hand and say, hey, I'm Ty, because people had questions, And I think that's important. Something that's probably not, people probably miss that, having access to you, having access to your knowledge and experience.
Yeah.
As part of being part of the organization.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. And one thing I do want to mention real quickly is that we have, just as a wrap here, that one thing that we've heard consistently from MS4 specifically is we want to have our own committees. We want to have our own groups. There's a lot of professional organizations out there, and they're good. And I'm not trying to disparage anything that they're doing at all, because I understand how difficult it is to navigate these waters here. But one thing that doesn't exist at the national level, or hasn't until now, is these kind of, a place for an MS4 staff person or staff people to go and just be with other MS4 staff folks, not consultants, not researchers. It's just it's their own kind of safe space. That's what we're creating too. So that's why if you join, you can, and it's not all formalized yet, but we need to get a critical mass. But as we're moving forward, the idea is in fact, when you join, you have to select which committee you want to be on. So that way we can start to form these committees. And again, it's a place, if you're really passionate about funding issues, you can join that committee. And the point here is to get peer-to-peer information exchange from folks that, that again, aren't trying to sell you something, which is fine. I'm all for capitalism. So you need to have that, but you also want to go sometimes to a place where someone isn't trying to sell you something, right? I mean, that's just, so right. It's that kind of safe space. So I just want to make sure that folks know that that's the kind of environment that we're trying to create for MS4 folks, because I think they don't have that. That's what we've heard again. And we're trying to create that. It's going to take time creating our own listserv and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to take time, but I promise you that we're going to be moving forward in a big way in the next couple of years. So we love to be part of making that happen. That's what I would ask.
Yes, sir. Well, and kudos to you for taking this on. I wish you the best. I'm sure I'll see you soon. Thank you again for taking the time to visit with us.
Yeah, we always see each other at various conferences around the country, so I'm sure we'll run into each other.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
So, all right. I think that's it. I think that's the pod.
Sounds great.
Thanks,
I
Seth.
appreciate it. No, thanks, Ty. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Stormwater World Podcast, and a big thank you to our sponsor, Bloxam & Company, home of the Coconut Fiber Stormwater Inlet Filter that is super easy to install and maintain. Make sure you go check them out at Bloxam & Company. You can check them out at bloxam.com. That's BLOCKSOM.com. And we'll see you on the next episode.